Today is November 20th, 2013, and we are at James A. Lovell Medical Health Center. My name is Cheryl Walker, and I'm with the Illinois State Library. Mr. Reynaldo Infante, was born March 12th, 1952, and I will be interviewing Mr. Fontaine. And for the record, Mr. Fontaine, can you please tell us what branch of service you were in?
I was in regular Navy.
And what years did you serve?
I served from December 20th, 1970 to December 9th, 1974.
And did you enlist?
Yes, ma'am. I enlisted.
And what was the highest rank that you received?
I was an E4 jet mechanic.
And at this time, would you like to share your military history and story?
Okay. I enlisted in December of 1974, a few months after getting out of high school. I had gotten a job at Gibson back in Genoa, Ohio, in which we were mining lime, and I decided, because every day that I got off of work, working second shift, when I blew my nose, everything always came out white. So I said, well, there's got to be a better way to make a living than this. So I decided to, well, a little bit before that, we were playing football against another town, just a bunch of high school kids, just out of high school. And I went and intercepted a ball, came out of the big pile, and my finger was 90 degrees from where it was supposed to be, so I was off work for a couple days. I had 4 friends that came, so I was walking down the street. I have no idea why, because I had a 1970 Chevelle. And I was walking downtown and seen some friends, and they said, oh, do you want to come down to Cleveland, Ohio, because we're all going to join the service. I said, sure, I'll go and watch you guys. And, just for curiosity, getting, off the road of doing nothing, I went down with them, and I was the only one who enlisted in the military out of the 5. So after I enlisted, this was funny, because my cousin and one of our best friends was there, and then we were asking the first class, oh, when do I need to be back? He says, you best be back at 0600, or else we're going to send somebody to come and get you. And I said, oh, okay, I'll be here. So I got there. We ended up flying out, because we're from Ohio, flew out to Chicago. They picked us up. I'm not sure who picked us. Somebody from the military picked us up and brought us here to Great Lakes. Spent almost 12 weeks in basic training, which was really interesting, because when you were out there folding your clothes, and not folding, but washing your clothes and hanging them outside, you brought them in, they were stiff as boards. So, but it really got us to be grouped together and work as a team. Okay, we didn't do a lot like the Army and Marines, where they do a lot of marching. We did a little bit more studying and classwork. We did very little marching, or, well, you march every place you went, but that was, when you hear about the Army, they're marching for 5 miles. We're just marching around here in the complex here at Great Lakes Recruit Center. And so it was very easy for me, because I was in very good shape. So that was a piece of cake. From there, we did our 12 weeks, graduated, and ended up going back home, and then from there flew out to Whidbey Island, Washington, which was kind of neat, because that's Oak Harbor, Washington, is where I was going, and the town next door where I had jabbed my finger and it was 90 degrees sideways was also Oak Harbor, Washington. So it was kind of like, a little joke when I was showing my mom and stuff like that. Not that she thought it was a joke, because I was leaving home as a young man. And I didn't even have to go in the military because my mom and dad were divorced, and I was the only boy in the family. So, and I had three sisters. So, but it turned out pretty good. So, ended up flying out there. Out here, it was very, very cold. Got out to Whidbey Island, Washington, and the grass was growing. I couldn't believe that. The difference in climates, and it's because of that Japanese current they got out there, as I learned, that kept us a little bit warmer than normal. So from there, I didn't end up going into any schools, and I didn't know why. They call it A schools and C schools, but that was fine. I went, got out there. My squadron was overseas, so myself and another gentleman from Detroit, I forget his name, we ended up working together and started prepping the area for our squadron to come back. Our squadron was VA 52 because there was an air squadron. We were in an air squadron in Whidbey Island, Washington. So from there, when they came back, the first thing we ended up doing is I ended up going to after a couple months, I ended up going to the chow hall to do my 3 months duty, which was fine. I learned how to cook. Ended up in the promoted myself from dishwashing to cooking, and to they put me in charge of the galley, as far as where you make all your fertile salads and things like that. So I was in charge there. So it was kind of good duty. Gained a couple pounds there, and then from there ended up going back to the squadron, and then they started showing me how, instead of because I was rated as a jet mechanic, but they put me into a plane captain division, in which what a plane captain does is inspects the airplanes at be post and pre and post, as they're going out and coming back, making sure there's not any oil leaks, or the lights were all working. There's just a variety of things that you would do, maybe like in your car. I guess most mechanics would know what I'm talking about. The name of the game is, you find something wrong, you write it down on a piece of paper, you take it in to the chief. He would assign the different divisions as far as the radar, or the oxygen. It's been a long time. The hydraulics, things, pneumatics, making sure that everything was working. That was really our job, is to inspect that airplane and make sure that when somebody is going to go out there, bam, it was ready to go. So um, did that for about 8 months, and then we ended up. Well, what I wanted to do is I wanted to become a para-rigger. So I talked to my division lieutenant, and what he had said is, well, if you work 8 hours of what you're doing now and work in the para-rigger uh, trailer for 8 hours, we'll see how you're doing, and then we could transfer you over and send you to school in New Jersey. And I said, no, that's all right. So, because I really liked what I was doing, but doing the para rigging was kind of like things that I could have done when I got out of service, because being in Port Clinton, Ohio, that means it's kind of like there's water there. So I come from a vacation land area. So put it on, as far as tarps for boats and repairing sails and things like that, that would have been a good money making for myself, as far as a good job. But, you know, it's always worked out. No matter what you're going to do in life, as long as you pursue what you want and do it correctly as much as you can, you usually come out okay. So, um, went overseas the first time. What was it? We went from Whidbey Island, Washington, down to um, Fallon, Nevada, in which we would do. The pilots were doing bombing runs, which was kind of neat, But we're still. It was kind of neat because now you're in a different area. Now you're in a desert environment instead of a mountain environment. Even though there was mountains out there, we were really in the in this desert, and it was kind of cool. I had this one watch where you're just sitting out there and you can see the jackrabbits running across. It was, I mean, those are big rabbits, because I was used to just regular rabbits from Ohio when you went hunting, and these jackrabbits were like twice the size. So that was kind of cool. Although we didn't get to do any hunting, we did get to go to the casinos. That was really cool because back in Ohio they never had anything like that. So but you wouldn't take a lot of money, $20, and that would be good. I'm not a big gambler. So from there, we flew back to Wood Valley, Washington, for a couple more months of preparing, and then we shot down to, well, we actually flew down on a jet airliner, the commercial, and landed in North Island, California, and then we met the ship down there. We met the Kitty Hawk down there. So then loading loading the whole squadron up, and then loading that squadron onto a carrier is quite a entertaining. I'm gonna say it's like moving your house, but out there you're just moving so much more material, So it was kind of neat. Um, First time in a carrier was kind of neat because the carrier is 1,000 feet long, and I'd been out in Lake Erie on smaller boats, maybe 20-footer at the biggest in my days, but this 1,000-foot carrier was quite a ship. When you're looking down, found out that it's about 100 feet. So that was that was kind of interesting, knowing that you don't want to fall overboard. So from there, then we went out for about first time we went out for like 3 weeks, out to sea, just for trial runs. They're out there, and they're launching aircraft and stuff like that. It's the first time that I've seen aircraft fall into the water. It shut off one of the catapults that jettisons off the ship carrier, and it didn't have it had a flare out in the engine, so it ended up going right into the water. But I did see the pilot eject, and that was kind of neat. The other thing is that I seen that was kind of neat was an A5, which is a reconnaissance aircraft, and when it was coming up parallel to us, it hit it let some gas out, and then hit the afterburners, and it shot out about, it seemed like a 100-foot flame. So not ever seeing things like that was kind of cool. It also taught us about safety. We had fire drills, and that was real important just in case we ever did have a fire, in which we did later on. I'll talk about that in a little bit. We did a lot of exercising. We did a lot of running, just to play a lot of football up in the flight deck on our time off, which you didn't have very much, because usually when you're out on the carrier, you're working 12 on and 12 off. So it gets, and then when you got working 12 on, it's a piece of cake. But when you're working 12 and then you're off to 12 hours, it's kind of, what do you do now? So we ended up buying tape recorders and recording music and things like that. So just to keep us busy, read a little bit here and there, wrote letters back home. It's not like today, where the communication's a lot better than it was in the 70s. We're watching TV and we're watching movies that were seemed like 15 years old. So it was kind of cool. The one thing is, when you came back after a cruise, everything was so different, because the communication that you were getting overseas, it was lagging. So when you got back, I think it was 1972 or 73, I'm not sure, when they had the gas wars. Well, I didn't even know anything about that till years later, because it was all news. It was just, you've seen a line of cars out there, but you don't really realize until you sit in that line waiting for gas. So that was kind of neat to see how that time warp is there. On my second cruise, that was kind of neat, because well, it's kind of neat and not, because what I did in my second cruise, I ended up injuring my knee. So what they did, after my first cruise was about 9 months, the second cruise for myself was only about 4 months. And what they did then they put me on shore. I did some shore duty, and then I went down and I got my knee operation in Subic Bay in the Philippines. So from there, then they ended up sending me back to the United States. But I ended up going back. They asked me if I wanted to go any place I wanted to go, and I said, well, I just go back to my old station. I'm not sure if that was good, bad, or indifferent, because I could have went someplace else, but it was kind of neat still. Was it okay?
Yeah.
Keep on talking? So, oh, there you go. We're having flickering lights, kind of like my talk here, flickering up and down. Uh, but that was kind of cool. Anyway, after I had my knee operation, then we went from Subic Bay to, geez, I forget the name of it. It was an Air Force base up in the Philippines, which was maybe 60 miles or something like that. So we took a taxi. There was three of us that rented a taxi and went up there. And then from there, then we flew from the Philippines to Japan, Tokyo, and then we flew from Tokyo. Well, I had my birthday in the Philippines, Clark Air Force Base. And went from Clark Air Force Base, we went to Tokyo. From Tokyo, I had my birthday in Clark Air Force Base, and then went to Tokyo, and then flew across the international date line, and had another birthday in Long Beach. We ended up going to San Francisco, and I had a friend that said, "Oh, why don't we go down to Long Beach?" I said, "Sure, I got cousins down there anyway." And then I just called in. They okayed it for a couple more days of vacation. Ended up going seeing my cousins down in California, which was kind of neat because I hadn't seen them in probably 15 years. So I got I see my uncles, my aunts, and my cousins, which was kind of neat. Haven't seen them since, but that was kind of neat. Then from there I flew back, and I didn't go back to my duty station. I went to a temporary assignment until I got out of the military, which was about 9 months. Because of the rehab, my knee still wasn't the way it should have been. So, but it was okay. They let me out 9 days early. So, well, when I went back, I ended up working in a tool room, which was kind of neat. I learned a little bit more about the mechanics, talking to the guys and things like that. Because um, where they put me for a temporary assignment was where they brought in the jet engines and they rebuilt them. So I learned, not that I worked on it, but still when you're looking and talking and asking questions, and that's really what you should always be doing on a job. And so it taught me, some new skills that I didn't have before. So, and then from there, shortly after that, they let me out 9 days early, which was like, yeah, baby, you know. So my my chief wanted me to stay in because I was only I think 23 or 24 when I was getting out, but he had the inside of we were in a depression, recession, probably reset. We're going to call it a recession, and I didn't realize that. It's kind of like my paycheck was coming every 2 weeks, so you don't really see that. And so when I got out of the service, it was really hard because being that I was more of a grunt, uh, pick and shovel guy, I could still, drive maybe a bulldozer, loader, and things like that. But with a bad knee, my knee kept on swelling up. So I bounced from job to job to job to job for a few years. But the cool part about this is when right before I got out of the military, uh, somebody put something in my head. We went camping up in the mountains, mountains up by Mount Baker up in Washington State. And my buddy says, "Ray, what are you going to do when you get out of the military?" I said, "You know what? I don't know." He says, "I'm going to Scotland." He was from Maine. He says, "I'm going to Scotland." Bob Dorn. "I'm going to Scotland." I said, "Oh, wow." So I went out and bought myself a Volkswagen van, put new tires on it, had a new rebuilt motor in it, and I went out and bought all new clothes and boots, pants, shirts, anything that I was going to need. And then I became a professional bum for about 3 years because it was always people were always were saying, "Well, what are you going to do when you get out of the military?" I said, "I'm going to travel," because I had the insight that I would probably never retire until I was about 70, because I could always see the way the government was going as far as you know, uh, and the long hindsight of everything. I could see that Social Security wasn't going to be around forever and things like that. So thank God it's still around. I still made it this far. I'm not sure if my kids will see that as much or whatever, but I just got underneath the wire for that, I think. So because I am going to be retiring very shortly, within 4 months of it's my wife. So um,
So, okay, you traveled after you got out of service.
well, yeah, I traveled. What I did is I probably hit a lot of states other than the New England states. I've been to most of the states. So, but when I was traveling, I ended up going down to Texas and visiting my dad and my cousins down there. And then I ended up going down and living in Georgia. That was an experience, you know, because without any money, I was just relying on the $52 a week from the unemployment. And it got jammed up because I moved from Ohio to Atlanta, Georgia. And what happens on there is they don't just come automatically. Back in the old days, you had to go to the unemployment office and do pink sheets, and they would send your work search to Ohio. And it probably took about 5 months before I got a check. So it was getting kind of skimpy, you know, because I had saved a little bit of money, not much. And then once I realized what was going on, you just didn't do a lot, didn't spend a lot of money, you know. So, you know, it got kind of rough. I ended up falling behind on my rent, you know. So what I ended up doing is I ended up leaving where I was living and started working and helping a group of people that I had met and moved down even about 100 miles south of Atlanta, Georgia. And we were building, they had bought 30 acres of land out there, and they took to me. They treated me like a son out there. So I didn't get no money, but I didn't have to pay no rent. I always had food. I had, you know, they gave me a little bit of gas money. And what else do you need? I had 30 acres. I had 30-acre lake to fish and hunt. So not that we did a lot of hunting, but it was all right, you know. And then after that, I ended up coming back home to Ohio. And then from there it was kind of like bad and some bad luck because I had no money now, you know. So I ended up starting to go to school. So decided, well, what are we going to do now? So I ended up using the Montgomery GI Bill, and I went for under vocational rehabilitation and education, and I got a certificate in electronics for in electronics, and then that really opened up things for me. You know, it's always a piece of paper that opens up everything for you. You know, you don't have to know how to do it, but if you get that certificate, you can at least present it to the employer for the interview. So that really opened up jobs for me. So I ended up working with a copy machine as a repairman. Went, went and trained into Cleveland and Toledo and Chicago for training, but it wasn't for me because what was happening is I became a repairman, but all of a sudden I'm carrying reams of paper, using my own truck. I was driving like 400 to 600 miles a week. So it became and I had an old van, so it didn't work out too good. So it was, what happened there was, my cousin ended up giving me a Volkswagen van. I mean, a Volkswagen Bug, an automatic. So only automatic. I had three Volkswagen. I had a Volkswagen van and two Volkswagen 63 Volkswagen Bug in the military, and then a Volkswagen van. I think it was a 68, but that was an automatic. I've never ever seen. That was the only automatic that I ever seen as far as Volkswagen. So I used that to go back and forth when I was going to school. So that worked out pretty good. And then that's when I ended up buying the van because I blew up the motor. And what was cool about it my landlord was a drinker, so he didn't care what I did. He had a perfect table. He had built a perfect table. I took that Volkswagen motor out of my car by hand. Of course, it used to be in good shape. Took it inside, rebuilt it, put it back in there by myself, and drove it. And then that's when I ended up buying another van, and I put a motor into that car, and ended up coming up here to Chicago to work because what happened is being on unemployment. My uncle said, "Can you take me to go see my sisters in Ohio?" I said, "Sure." I was working two jobs and I was unemployed from those two jobs because they were seasonal jobs. So I was collecting a little bit of unemployment. So I said, that's not enough to live on. So I came up, applied at Motorola, and got an interview with the person. Says, "Well, this job's for 2 weeks. You don't want the job." I said, "Oh, okay, you're probably right." Oh, that was wrong. That was a big mistake. But then I Ended up going to another interview in Barrington, Illinois, and they said, sure, we'll take you. So I came up, was there for almost 7 years before I got laid off, but I did meet my wife there. And we got married, had 3 children. Now we have 2 grandchildren, and been together with her been married, I think, 30, I'm in trouble now, huh? I know May 14th is our anniversary, 1984, but I think we've been together like for 33 years. So take or give a year there. So it was pretty successful coming to Illinois. Even though I've always wanted to go back home, I feel that now I'm not going to go anyplace. I'll probably be buried here someplace in the cemetery because my kids are here. So that works out. It doesn't make no difference where you live. It's if you're happy. So, and we seem to be getting along pretty good. It's like everybody else. We have a little ups and downs, but pretty much doing okay. Um, Other than that, after I got laid off from the company, then I went into the unemployment office and somebody said, hey, do you want to work with me? I said, sure. He said, go and take a test downtown. Took the test downtown. And what happened from there, I got a passing grade, came back, and about every couple of weeks, I'd be going back to the unemployment office and say, did you hear anything? Did you hear anything? And after about 5.5 months, or 5 months, he passed away. And then they offered me a job here at the VA hospital, at the Captain James A. Level VA hospital, or Federal Health Care Center, and worked here for a month and a half, and then they called me to work for the state, so I left the federal government to go to work for the state, and that's where I am now. Now I started out as a Veterans Employment Representative for 5 months. My first year, came in second in the nation for helping vets. From there, I decided to go and do unemployment claims, and that worked out because that gave me about $4 more an hour. And then from there, they upped the ante on the job that I had before, or the job I have now as a Veterans Employment Representative. So I came back over after 9 years, and I've been doing this job now for maybe 13 years. So, but I've been with the state for about 28 years now. So we're coming down to an end. Okay.
You were off the coast of Vietnam, and did you ever have any entertainers come onto your ship?
No, we didn't have any entertainers come onto our ship from what I remember, but we would have stand downs, what they call stand downs, in which the ship would not do anything for at least 24 hours, and then they would feed us and we can relax and go on a lot of people would come up on the flight deck, because I worked on the flight deck when I was in the military. Not a lot of people worked on the flight deck. It was, from what I can tell, it is at that time it was the second most dangerous place in the world to work. So it didn't really, excuse me. It's my wife trying to get a hold of me because she's a little sick right now. It was the second most dangerous place in the world. The only thing that scared me was the propellers. When you're in flight operations and then the jet aircraft are turning and they have to give it a big boost, so get that jet aircraft going. I've seen guys just floating and, excuse me. Okay, I can't talk right now. I'm interviewing. Bye. I'll call you back. Seeing people from the exhaust itself just swept right off their feet and rolling down the deck, and knowing if you roll too far, you can fall off the deck, and it's at least 90 feet, a minimum of 90 feet down. We did see one person, a lieutenant, got ate up by a, geez, it's been such a long time, an A7, maybe an A7. It's a single jet engine, and it's got probably a circumference probably about 4 feet. So when that baby's full blast, that poor guy came out in little chunks about this size. You know, so we had another person that got blown over. He was a refueler. What would happen there was going to be the aircraft churned, gave it gas. The I can't blame that on the ship, but he was sitting where he shouldn't have been sitting. He was sitting at the edge, and just from the blast, it blew him over. So what was really interesting is when you got done and you're launching, helping launch uh, anywhere from 50 to 70 airplanes, it gets pretty hot out there. You take off your t-shirt and you're just wringing it out with water, you know. So most of the time we wouldn't even wear our t-shirts. We would just take them off, wrap them around, and you know, bam, within 20 minutes they would be dry, even though they were still on your body, you know. So uh, probably the most dangerous situation that we were in is we were off the coast of Vietnam, and we lost one of our boilers, and we lost like 13 guys from the steam. So that was probably the most dangerous thing. You could just feel the whole ship shaking, and being up in the flight deck, they took my aircraft and put it all the way to the aft, and I wasn't too happy about that because you know it's kind of like you could just feel the whole ship just shimmying back and forth from the explosions. So they thought we were going to go down because they thought that the boiler was going to go right down through the ship. They had called in the sea tugs to come and help us, but fortunately they got the fire under control, and it was okay. I still got my mom's got a clipping still of that. So, because I always thought it was 25, maybe 25 got hurt, 13 got killed. So, but it's not those. It's very, very dangerous. It can be very dangerous on a ship. So you got to watch yourself. So, um, when I was in the hospital having a knee operation, I seen another lieutenant. He came in. Both his legs were chopped off right at the chins because they snapped a cable, and the cable is probably about 2.5 inches. And when that snapped, it's like it takes anything and everything that's in its way. It just like right, you're like butter. It's coming with that tensile strength, like a rubber band. You pull that rubber band, you break it, bam, it's so. Um, Another question.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell me?
Um, I think that the reason I joined the military, to tell you the truth, because I watched so many Ben Crosby and Bob Hope movies back in the old days, where they're on the South Pacific and they're out there dancing and carrying on. I said, well, that doesn't seem to be too bad, you know. Rather than watching John Wayne, you know, it was this or this. What do you want to do? Because I joined the Navy to see the world. So I got my share of, you know, seeing the world. It was a good experience. Something that I would do again for the 4 years. You know, it's something that I think that everybody uh, that wants to do should do it. So it's a good experience. Gives you good leadership roles. It shows you how to listen, uh, what to do, what not to do in dangerous situations. So uh, I want to thank everybody and say that's it.
Well, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for the time that you served our country.
Thank you.
And I would also like to thank you for allowing me to be the one that interviewed you and to hear your story firsthand.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate that.